So today we're going to talk about how to make chicken salad. Should be a good time. I want to welcome our video audience. We're glad to have you with us as always. And I'm recording the early service here today rather than I typically do the second service, but just for variety, we're going to do this today. So we are going to talk about eating chicken. Now, I had for years not eaten chicken nuggets because I thought they're kind of disgusting. You know, it's just ground up chicken with flour and lots of salt. And so I would not eat chicken nuggets ever. And then I was taking my youngest daughter out somewhere one time, and she ordered 10 chicken nuggets at McDonald's, and she couldn't eat them all. And of course, being a true Hollander, I wasn't going to throw them away. So I tasted them, and they were pretty good. I was impressed. I said, you know, I could probably eat these things because they're actually kind of tasty. I'm sure they're not healthy, but they're tasty, and I've kind of enjoyed that. And then there's the fad right now of chicken sandwiches, you know, probably because of Chick-fil-A and whatnot. So you could get a chicken sandwich just about anywhere. And I'll bet I could start a riot in this room right now arguing over which chicken sandwich is the best, because there's quite a bit of variety there. Now, my stomach's growling right now, but there's really nothing to discuss about the quality of chicken sandwiches because Popeyes is obviously the winner of the best chicken sandwich. But, well, it's just my favorite. And I like smoked chicken if it's not too smoky. But my all-time favorite is fried. Probably my own fried chicken, or the best chicken in town here is Pizza Ranch. And they're going to give the Lake in Bethel $10,000 just for me saying it. Oh, I wish they would, but it's not in the cards. But that's just my favorite. We went to a family deal of Diane's family, and they met at the Pizza Ranch in Orange City, Iowa, which, you know, Pizza Ranch is an Iowa thing. And we went to the buffet, and all I ate was the chicken, but I only had 8 pieces, so it wasn't so bad. Now, chicken salad, I don't really care for very much. Don't like it at all. I quite often skip it if it's there. And you've all heard the proverb, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken droppings. Politically correct way to say this. But today we're going to talk about chicken droppings. You know, people usually say you can't make chicken salad when they're having their picture taken. But there is a fact. We all have chicken droppings in our lives metaphorically. Those miserable things that happen to us, the health issues like cancer or just getting old. Yesterday, I climbed a sand dune with my 4-year-old granddaughter, and I discovered something really important. I'm not 30 years old anymore. She just zips right up those, and I'm, you know, needing oxygen. So we all have those things in our lives. We have job losses. We have family problems. Everybody has them. These are the unpleasant things of life. And maybe an equal challenge are the good things that we have, the resources like a strong mind or a strong back or work opportunities or wealth opportunities or relationship opportunities, spiritual opportunities. Maybe these things can be just as challenging. But we all have to, you know, kind of play the cards that we're dealt. How do we do that? And it's important to Jesus how we do that. I've been thinking a lot lately of some C.S. Lewis things, and he maintains that this life is a boot camp, and that this picture here is the Great Lakes Naval Station, which many people have gone through in the history of this country, have gone through boot camp right there. I think, Gary, didn't you say you went to boot camp there? Was it a pleasant experience? I didn't hear that. You want to do it again? Good. But, you know, it's a test. It's like this life is preparation for something much bigger, and the final test is actually dying. because then we've graduated and we can move on. So the question I want us to think about this morning is, what's our GPA? What's our grade point average going to be after we take that final test? The high school that I went to, for the kids that didn't apply themselves or were unable to handle the academic work, they gave out a certificate of attendance on graduation day to people like that. Those who just couldn't cut the regular academic load, they wouldn't do their homework, that sort of thing. And of course, there were us nerds who got the good grades and made fun of them for that. But what is your grade going to be at the end of this life? And Jesus told several interesting parables on that. But he told one about this. Now, you understand, too, that parables are just stories that Jesus made up. They're not intended to be literal. These are teaching techniques that the rabbis used in those days. We're going to look at one of the most important ones today from Matthew chapter 25. And it reads like this. Again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. And then he left on his trip. So you notice the master, who's obviously a parallel for God here, gave out talents, gave out the money according to their abilities. He was looking at, well, this one can handle this much, et cetera, et cetera. And he still does that. He gives out resources and liabilities according to our ability to manage them. It could be what family you were born into. We don't get to choose that. Could be any number of things. Could be your mental acuity scores or whatever. I look at that, I think, well, I've had a lot of good resources. And at the risk of sounding politically incorrect, I was born a white male. And that is still an advantage in this culture. It still is. I was born in Iowa, which makes me, just a little bit better than everybody else. No, it doesn't, but it was an interesting time. When I started college, it was cheap. You couldn't, it doesn't even come close. A full year with room and board was $3,000 when I started out. And then it got a lot cheaper after that yet. And then academics have always come easily for me. I've been healthy and strong most of my life. How have I managed those resources? That's the question that we get to ask today. Jesus goes on with this parable and says this. The servant who received the 5 bags of silver began to invest the money and earned 5 more. The servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received the 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. Fairly typical. You always have that one person who has a secret gift, doesn't want to share it. And in my experience, it's usually because, I just don't want to look stupid. I don't want to look dumb. In other words, I'm just too self-centered to take a risk to use the talents that God has given me. Well, the parable goes on with this. It says, after a long time, their master returned from his trip and called them to give an account of how they had used his money. The servant to whom he had entrusted the 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 5 more. He probably surprised himself. Took what he'd given and doubled it, made more. The passage goes on with this. The master was full of praise. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I'll give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together in this life and the next. Now remember the boot camp idea. What if God is just vetting us right now? What if he's checking us out to see how we're going to perform in a much more important role in the next life. This guy took what he had been given and made something of it. No excuses, no complaints of handicaps or anything else. No complaints about how hard it was. He was grateful for the opportunity. I'm guessing the guy with the 5 bags got out of bed every morning and said, "This is the day the Lord has made. We'll rejoice and be glad in it." And then the passage goes on. The servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, "Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I've earned 2 more." This is a repeat. This is a teaching technique that the rabbis used in that day. If they had an important point, they repeated it 3 times to make sure it got through. It's a Hebrew teaching method. This guy did not have as many resources as the other one, but he did well with what he had. He didn't waste anything, and he didn't sit down and have a pity party and say, "Well, how come I didn't get 5 bags?" You know, it's kind of an interesting experiment. Do that with kindergartners sometime. Just give each, if you got a table of kindergartners, give each one piece of candy, and one person you give 5 pieces to, and then just stand aside and watch what happens. It's really kind of an interesting time. Now, it goes on with this. And again, he repeats, the master said, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I'll give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." And then the story gets a little darker. Then the servant with the 1 bag of silver came and said, "Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here is your money back." Human nature hadn't changed very much, has it? It's your fault I didn't invest this money because you're so mean. You've got trouble with the boss. You see that every once in a while. I was talking to a fellow the other day. He had 10 jobs in the last 2 years. And every one of those 10 jobs, so interesting because the boss was an idiot in all 10 of those. Now, what are the odds of that? Can you find that? I don't think so. But that was his thing. Or maybe he's saying, "Oh, I was just too shy to get anything done." Maybe we need to realize shyness for what it is, which is basically selfishness. You don't want to look stupid, so you're reserved with that. Afraid of criticism, so he didn't share his gifts. Well, let's see how the boss responds to this. The master replied, "You wicked and lazy servant. If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it." Wicked and lazy. I've had many different bosses through the years, but I've never had someone call me wicked and lazy. I've been called lazy and I've been called wicked, but never at the same time. It's just kind of an interesting thing. This statement, though, is not something I want to hear from the creator of the universe. I don't want him to come to me and say, "Oh, you wicked and lazy servant." That'd be kind of scary. So the story goes on like this. Then he ordered, "Take the money from this servant and give it to the one with the 10 bags of silver." And then here's Jesus' main point with this story, verse 29. "To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Now throw this useless servant into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." So he's saying, use what you've been given, and you'll get more in this life and in the next. That's not such a good prediction for those who don't use their resources for good things. There's the weeping of regret. There's the gnashing of teeth. You ever gnash your teeth? You know, where you say, oh, I should have done this. I've done that many times. It's when you deeply regret something. And I'm sure this guy had his regrets at this particular point. But the 29th verse, by far the most important one here. To those who use well what they're given, even more will be given. That means you can apply that to anything. Apply it to time. You know, those who procrastinate. I have a procrastination issue. Quite often I have to force myself just to get started doing something. And that is, I think, what he's talking about here. I'm not using the resource of time that I was given well. Sometimes we do that with our bodies. You know, this extra 50 pounds I'm carrying around is not a wise thing. And we don't take care of our bodies, which are a tremendous resource that we have. Let's all go have some fried chicken. You know, it's interesting how we don't take care of those things. And our souls, most people are not even aware they have a soul, let alone do anything for spiritual growth. And there's all kinds of other things. Now, maybe your life resembles a big old bucket of chicken droppings. How are you going to make the best of that? How are you going to make chicken salad out of that? Maybe you feel like you have nothing to contribute to this life. Ask yourself the question, do you have something to contribute? Is there anything you can do to make life better for yourself or for someone else? I think that life is a mess. It's a huge mess for all of us. But no matter how big a mess your life is, you can always make it better. And you have the resources to do so. You can make chicken salad out of chicken droppings. And I'm going to tell you how right now. A lesson I learned from my grandmother, of all things. We used to have chickens when I was a kid. We had a little chicken coop, 300 birds. And we didn't clean it out all that often. The chickens do their dropping under the roosts where they sleep at night. And so that would pile up, and eventually it would get about as high as the bottom roost. And then my dad would decide it was time to clean that out. Now, I kid you not, one of the funniest memories I have. So I was probably 10 years old or so, and there's 3 guys, my dad and 2 people that were working for him, went into that chicken coop with shovels, and they were going to clean that out. Well, the one old boy, he started gagging. Now, you know what happens with Hollanders, if one of them starts gagging, they all do. And it wasn't long where there was, now I can see it in my mind's eye again. These 3 old boys were standing there all, throwing up and trying to get these chicken droppings out of there because they were really nasty smell, but I was having so much fun watching those guys, I stayed in there and doing it. Do you know what they did with those chicken droppings? They filled up, one guy filled up a 5-gallon bucket with them. I thought, that is so strange. And they put it in the back of a pickup and took it into town. I said, now what are you doing with that? And he goes, that's for your grandma. That's weird. Why would my grandma want a bucket of chicken droppings? But what she did is she put it on her garden and rototilled it in. And then grew vegetables in there. Lettuce, broccoli, all kinds of stuff. And it was good. She made chicken salad out of chicken droppings. And we can all do that. We can take the nasty things of our lives, turn them around, and make something good out of it. It just takes a little more effort. So I'm telling you, no matter what kind of hand you've been dealt in this life, you can make it better because Jesus wants to partner with you. So we need to invite him to do that. Remember this promise of verse 29. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given. and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Let's pray together. Lord, sometimes we look at our lives and all we see is chicken droppings. All we see are the negative things that have come down the pike towards us. But you've set us an example of redemption with what you've done for us. And now you've called us to be your redeeming factor in this world. Give us the courage to do that. We want to do it. Help us to learn how to take the nasty things of life and make them into something good, just as you've asked us to do. You've blessed us with so many resources, and we thank you for it. Amen. As always, thanks again for joining us. We have 2 services on Sunday morning, and if you're in town, we'd invite you to come, once at 9 o'clock and once at 11 o'clock. And if you wish to support Laketon Bethel, you can go to laketonbethel.org and follow the steps there on our website. Or you can just look at this QR code, scan it in with your phone, and you can give through Secure Give, and all your gifts will go directly into our account. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.